Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raina Ghazi, and I'm the Teacher Development Manager for Macmillan Education International Curriculum. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon in the UK. Gill Budgell will be delivering a session focusing on synthetic phonics for young learners. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to write them in the chat, and we will do our best to answer your questions. I'll pass it over to Gill now. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm just looking at where people are joining us from. Lots of people from Jamaica. Welcome. Belize. Fantastic. Lots of people joining. So we'll just give them a few moments. Trinidad, welcome. Very exciting to be seeing so many of you. This morning I'm talking to you about synthetic phonics and young learners of English. We'll take about 45 minutes to an hour, and I usually say there's time for questions at the end, but then I usually talk too much, so there may not be time for questions. But do put your questions in the sidebar, and if I can, I'll pick them up as we go through. Let's just check. I'm hoping everyone can hear me now. I'm pretty sure you can. Okay, so let's get started. So this is me. And this is where I am. I'm actually talking to you from beautiful Barbados. Not quite so sunny this morning as in my photo, a little bit cloudy, but beautifully warm. And I'm here for about a year working independently. So I haven't seen anybody in the chat yet saying that they're based in Barbados, but if you are, I'm probably just round the corner from you. So yeah, Gill Budgell. Maybe I've seen some of you before in various events around the world. Hi, Charlene. Charlene has said I'm from Barbados, so just noticed that. You can see I started life as a mainstream teacher in the UK, so I'm early years trained. In fact, I'm first school trained, which is 3 to 7 years. So my whole career has been about early language development. I spent a couple of years doing mainstream teaching before I got really interested in bilingual children and supporting, actually it was children in the UK who were mainly Greek and Turkish speaking, and I needed to do lots of support with them to support their home language and to develop the English alongside. I then went into educational publishing because I got very frustrated with not having enough fantastic resources, and I knew lots of teachers felt the same. So in fact, I've spent most of my career now working in educational publishing, always striving to produce that elusive, fantastic resource. And of course, what I've learned over the years is that, of course, we, the teachers, are the best resource, and all we need are a few things to help us along the way. But actually, it's what we do and what we do with the children that is the most effective. So you can see I've worked in early years and primary. I've worked in English language development, including phonics, which is what we're talking about today, and also specialising in both UK and international markets. So I've been lucky enough to work all around the world. So what are we going to try to cover today? Well, a little bit about what we mean by phonics, because obviously I've been having a look at your various curricula, and there are lots and lots of you this morning. I think probably nearly 100, or if not more. So it's really hard for me to interact with you as an audience very much. So I'm going to just go back to basics and say, okay, what do we mean by phonics? I also think in this climate, we need to be very clear about what the evidence is for phonics, because, you know, we're not allowed to use anything now that hasn't been proven in some way to have an impact and to be effective. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit on that, but give you some links. So if you're interested in following up on the research, you can. And then I thought it would be helpful and fun, actually, because phonics can be a lot of fun, to look at what part phonics plays in reading and writing development, early stages. And then what are we looking for? If we were able to look for a systematic synthetic phonic program, SSP, I will mention several times in the presentation, and it stands for Systematic Synthetic Phonic Program. I may test you later on that to see if you're all with me. So I thought it'd be useful to just show you what one looks like. What are the features? What are the things you would be looking for if you wanted to invest in a phonic program? So I hope that sounds okay. And first of all, I also thought I would show you this slide, which is, let's start by saying what it isn't, because there's lots of things about what it is, but sometimes it's easier to start with the other way around. So some of these things, probably all of these things, you're familiar with, and we're not saying these things aren't important in early language development. They're very important, all of them. But they're just not so relevant for systematic synthetic phonics. So it's not about memorizing words. It's not about look, say, cover, write, check, where you look at a word and then you try and memorize it. It's not about guessing. It's not about looking at a picture where the man's got a funny hat on, or there's a child sat under a palm tree and guessing that the sentence says the boy is under the tree. So that kind of links with picture prompts. It's not really about alphabetical order. Alphabetical order is obviously so important for so many other things. We all sing, you know, alphabet songs and enjoy that with the children, and we get them to write the letters of the alphabet. That is important for phonics, but alphabetical order isn't necessarily the best order for teaching systematic synthetic phonics. I'll tell you why later. You may have some ideas about why. And if you do, pop them in the box, because I can then see that you're all experts already. It's not really about letter names. It's not really about A, B, C. It's about understanding what that letter shape represents as a sound. A, B, K, and so on. It's not about onset and rhyme, where we say, oh, look, we can read cat, so now we can read at, b, at, at. It's not about that. It's not about patterns or sight words. It's not, that's back to memory, isn't it? Sight words. It's not just memorizing. I've got to keep all these words in my head and remember them. People are still joining, so that's really nice to see. Welcome everybody if you've just joined in. We've just begun with this slide about what synthetic phonics is not, so we know that we can kind of clear the decks. It's not about listening for sounds in the environment. You may be able to hear in Barbados, we've got these beautiful bird chirpings going on in the background. It's lovely, and it's important that children listen and identify those things, but it isn't about synthetic phonics. And so on. Rich literary text, no, you won't find that. Shared reading, not really. It's about independent reading. Reading for pleasure, well, it is pleasurable when you can first see a little book, a very, very simple little book, and you can read it yourself. That's hugely pleasurable, but it's not about a rich literary picture book that's oozing with juicy, rich language. It's not that. And it's also not about elaborate activities. So you can see on my pictures here, I've got some children who are elaborately dressed up. And that's great for World Book Day. It is World Book Day today, so I should have started by saying Happy World Book Day to you all. And certainly in the UK, if children were in school, which they're not until Monday, children would be going into school today dressed up as their favourite book characters. So that's fine, but that's not systematic synthetic phonics. So I hope that's given you a good kind of starting point. Do put any questions in the box at the side, because I can see your questions, and I will try to pick them up as we go through. So what is it? If it's not all of those things, what is it? Well, it's about the English alphabetic code. It's about understanding the relationship between the grapheme, which is the written letter, and the sound that that written letter represents. So on this slide, you can see I've got some simple examples. So the letter M gives the sound, represents the sound and we don't say m, we don't put the on the end, we say It's a long, pure sound. The next one you can see, funnily enough, has 2 letters, but 1 sound. This is another important principle of the English alphabetic code. So it's C and H together make the sound ch, as in chick. So that's another important principle. You can see where I'm going here. On the next one, it's how many letters? Yeah, it's 3. 3 letters, I, G, H, and they can represent the sound I. And in the final one, O, U, G, H, so 4 letters, 1 sound. O, U, G, H can represent the sound ow. But hang on, you may say. What about the different representations of O-U-G-H? Actually, we pronounce it differently in many different words. So although we know it represents ow in a word like bough, the bough of a tree, it can also represent the sound off, as in cough, or oo, as in through, and ow, as in, o, as in though. So you can see that this is another important principle, that you learn some rules and then you very quickly learn in English that actually those letters, we have to learn that they can represent different sounds. So that's a really important point too. Good morning, Charlene. Charlene's just joined us from Jamaica. The other important principle here is that the same sound can be written in different ways. So this is the flip side of this previous screen where we saw that the same letters can be pronounced differently. We have to teach children that explicitly. And then here we have to teach them explicitly that if you want to write the sound A, you have to make some choices in your writing, in spelling. So here we learn that an important point of the English alphabetic code is that it's both about reading and writing. They're like 2 sides of the same coin. And we always talk about blending to read and segmenting to spell. So, and here we are. Here's some of those exceptions. Carlene has just said, in English, for every rule, there's an exception. Oh, so true. And that's what makes it so difficult for so many children to learn, and particularly bilingual children, of course. Particularly bilingual children who may be dealing in a different script as well in their mother tongue. So here we've got, look, day, wait, make, apricot, and 8. All including that A sound, but featuring different spelling patterns. So that's what we're trying to teach the children in very small, discrete steps, but very explicitly, because when they know those rules, they can fly, and that's what we want them to do. So I didn't want you to see that screen initially. If you think about the word phonics, P-H-O-N-I-C-S, with your knowledge of letters and sounds in English, how else could you spell that word? Maybe you could pop some responses into the sidebar and I can have a look. So think about those, even the PH. Here we go, thank you. So we've got lots and lots of lovely responses. We've got beginning the word with an F. We've got ending the word with an X, or ending the word with a CK. A CKS. So fantastic, thank you. That tells me that you're already phonic experts. Charlene's got GHUNIX, so that's an interesting one. This is where it'd be so good if it was live, because we could have a conversation about that. But anyway, here's one I made earlier. Have a look at the screen now and you can see we can have such fun with playing with these letters and sound combinations. And when children become quite proficient, you can actually play these games with them and challenge them and say, okay, of all of those, which is the correct spelling? You have to make choices as a writer. So here we go. I cheated on some of them. I put double F at the beginning of the word, which obviously we don't typically have in English. So I did take some liberties, but you get the idea. This is where we want children to be able to both read these types of combinations and to write them and to have fun doing it. Morning, Elsie from Belize. She's just joined. Okay, here's another example of this kind of fun that we can have. Some of you may or may not have seen this before. It's quite very old, and it was presented by Bernard Shaw, who was a famous Irish poet and playwright. And he said this word represents a very common English word. Does anybody know the word that he said this represents? I'm just having a look to see if someone is typing. There's usually somebody that knows this. No, it's not ghost. Yeah, it is, Elliot. It's fish. How on earth can these letters be read as the word fish? Well, if you think about GH, which kind of word ends in GH but with a f sound? It's a word like tough or rough or enough. Yeah, thanks Mandisa and Rochelle. Cough, great. So GH can represent f in English. What about the O here? We want the O in goatee to actually sound like I. Where does the letter O in an English word sound like I? Well, actually in, say, women. If you think about the plural of woman, women, the O, we pronounce it as I. So we've got f, I. And what type of word do we have that has T and I in it that sounds like sh? If you think about a word like creation or nation, then the T and the I represent the sound sh. Or lotion, thanks Charlene. So you can see here we have the word fish. I mean, it's nonsense, obviously, and he used it famously to show how difficult learning the English language could be. So just as a little bit of fun, that's to get us started. But I can see that you are on the ball this morning because you're putting lots of lovely ideas and words representing these letters into the chat box. So what do we have next? Let's think a little bit about why we think systematic synthetic phonics, SSP, remember, is used throughout the world and thought to be the very best start for young children in their independent reading and writing. Well, I could spend a whole webinar on this, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. And for every piece of research, as you know, that you can find to support something, you can find a counter piece of research. So it really is a little bit thin for me to offer this. But there is evidence, plenty of evidence there for you if you wanted to go and pursue it later. It's easiest really to start with around the early 2000s. The National Reading Panel in the States commissioned a huge report to find out what the evidence was for systematic synthetic phonics. And on the back of that, there was a huge 7-year project commissioned in Scotland. And the result of that became actually a Pearson phonic program called Phonics Bug. And at the same time in Australia, there was also a huge piece of research. And the evidence from those massive studies showed that the phonic approaches, particularly systematic synthetic phonics, I'll talk about the difference between that and another type of phonics called analytic phonics later, just to be clear, was consistently found to be effective, particularly with children aged 5 to 7. And it actually showed an impact of an additional 4 months of progress. But there are lots of caveats around this. That's the kind of thing that we'll need to look at now. For example, we need more studies around the impact of phonics, systematic synthetic phonics, with bilingual children. You know, bilingual children already come with knowledge of letters and sounds and alphabet systems. So they come with a different set of skills. And I think there hasn't been enough work done around that. So that would be really interesting to pursue. More up to date, there was a research project in 2018 by the Education Endowment Foundation. You can see the logo there, bottom left. They are a British organisation who carry out extensive classroom research evidence about what's effective, how much it costs and how much impact it has. And they recently did this study, which again confirmed that their findings found that phonics is particularly beneficial for young learners 4 to 7 as they begin to learn to read. So that's just giving you a tiny flavour of what more needs to be done, but also where this drive has come from. And I think, I don't know whether any of you are already using systematic synthetic phonics. Perhaps some of you are, but certainly I think we need more research around bilingualism. So, systematic synthetic phonics, SSP. You can see now why I say SSP, because it's a bit of a tongue twister. Works best when it's as your first approach with young children and relatively fast. Why do we do it? Why do we do it in the UK, or why do they do it in the States, for example? It's in the UK, it's because we actually have some statutory requirements, some testing regimes, which drive us to need to take this approach. So it is statutory for the UK. We have a reception baseline assessment, which demands some elements of phonic knowledge. We have a year one, which is like grade 1, 5 to 6 year olds phonics screening check. And that's exclusively synthetic phonics. It asks children to decode real words, but nonsense words as well, just to make sure that they are really able to associate the letter with the sound, blend them and read. And we also have in our national curriculum, we have some expectations around synthetic phonics. So that's the reason that it happens in the UK. And I'm sure around the world, different countries have different statutory requirements. Snappy Sounds, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about as I go through the programme, was devised in Australia, for example. So, you know, they have a requirement. The requirement really, as I've mentioned, is to start by 5 and end by 7. So it's kind of short and sharp. You can do it, get the children up and running, give them confidence, and then it's, in theory, it's done. I know life's not quite like that, but you know, you can always go back and do intervention, but generally that's the principle. It needs to be quite fast, but obviously caution, not so fast that you leave learners behind. We always need to go back and assess and check that they've got it and consolidate it and relearn it. It works best when it's not mixed and matched with other things. It's much better if you choose something and you apply that program to the T, to the letter. And it also works best when it's consistent. Like most good teaching, to be fair, is about consistency. And in something like Snappy Sounds, there's this lovely mantra, which is I do, you do, we do. So the teacher models, then she says to the children, now you do it, and they try, and then let's all do it together. So there's this constant, consistent approach to overlearning. So I had a quick look, because I'm in Barbados, I had a quick look at your attainment targets. I couldn't look at all of the countries from the various Caribbean countries that you're representing today, but I had a quick look. I was just curious to see whether in the attainment targets for early childhood and infants A and B, whether there was any specific reference to systematic synthetic phonics. So I didn't find an explicit reference, but I did find elements that are really important. So I found references to things like repeat speech training rhymes. So that would fit with the I do, you do, we do. Someone has said, shouldn't the sequence be the other way around? And actually there is an argument to say that I do it, and then we do it, and now you do it. You kind of release them, but you can play with that, I think. It's that nice principle that you can train the children up to join in with you and give them confidence. I also found references to speaking standard English and providing good models for that. I think that can be quite controversial around the world. So, you know, but certainly I found references to that. Correct letter formation in terms of how you write each letter is really, really important too. And that is an important part of SSP. Reading a text independently to an audience, that's what phonics is about. It's about trying to give children the confidence to be able to pick up a book, take it home and say, do you know what, Mum and Dad, I can read this. And it's not Shakespeare, it's not a rich literary text, but it's a text that I as a 5-year-old can read, and I know I can do it. And that gives a huge confidence to children. It's about recognizing high frequency words. I picked that up. Yes, sometimes there are words, as we'll explore in a moment, there are words that phonics doesn't help with massively. The is one of those words, or who is one of those words. And we use phonics as our first approach, but sometimes we have to give a little jiggle to help us with decoding those words. And it also talked in the Barbados documents about games to enforce language concepts, blends and digraphs. So those were the things I found, and apologies if I missed things, but I just thought it'd be useful to kind of have a little look at some of those things that are relevant. So where does this all work? Where does phonics sit within reading? You know, we've said why it's important, we've said what it is and what it isn't. Where does it fit? Well, this arose out of some of that research that I flagged. This was a simple view of reading created by someone called, used actually in a research report by Sir Jim Rose in the UK. And I really like it because it puts phonics in its place. You can see there are two axes. One's about language comprehension and processing and understanding, and the other is about word recognition. So obviously phonics sits on that word recognition axis, and we don't want learners who are bottom left that can't recognise letters and sounds and recognise words and have poor comprehension. That's the worst possible place to be. Where we want them to be is top left, where they can see the letters, they know the sounds, they can blend them, they can read them, and they understand what they're reading. That's what we want from all our children. And then you can see there are different variations top left, where you can you struggle with decoding, but actually if you talk to a child like that, they often have very good comprehension. So there's something not right there with their decoding. And in the bottom right corner, you can see these are the children who have good word recognition. They can decode anything. You can give them a book this thick and it's totally inappropriate for their age, and they can read it because they can decode. They have no idea what they're reading. And obviously we don't want that either. We want children to learn a love of reading and an understanding of reading. More recently, there was this model offered. And again, I really like this, although it's more complicated. The references are at the bottom here of these slides. So if you want to go away and have a look more at these, they're quite interesting. This really puts it into context. You've got the language comprehension at the top in the red strands. And at the bottom, you've got the word recognition, and that's where the decoding and the phonics sits. And these strands intertwine from very, very early on with young children. And as they become increasingly intertwined, we become skilled readers and actually writers too, because we mustn't forget this is also about writing. Someone did try to do a writing rope, but I don't think it was quite so effective. But it's the same principle. And when ultimately our goal is to intertwine these elements of language comprehension and word recognition to become fluent readers with a love for learning and a love for reading. So I hope they're useful for you. So rattling on, we are actually already halfway through. So I told you I like to talk too much. What do we mean then? What do we mean by a complete SSP program? If we were looking for one, what would it be? Well, you want really to have a structured and incremental program. You know, there's a lot in that alphabetic code that we looked at the beginning. There's so much to explore. So it's really important that it's structured and it's just gradual so that we bring the children with us. You really want a program that has fantastic teacher resources, whether it's a book or whether it's online. You want clear lesson plans, again, whether it's on a card, in a book, online. You want lots and lots of practice for application, because once you've taught it, as you know, you can teach it one day and the children have got it, and then the next day they've forgotten it. And so we need lots and lots of overlearning in lots of different ways. And you need assessment support, because if you don't know what they've got and what they haven't, then you don't know where to go next or how quickly you should go to the next lesson. I think lots of teachers need or welcome a program that supports them with CPD, continued professional development, because we're still learning, we're all still learning. And these are not for some people, it's new knowledge and it's new skills and new approaches. So I would highly recommend that. And of course, we want resources for learners in a program, because that helps us as teachers. And we want reading books, as I said, decodable reading books, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and targeted phonic activities. So we'll talk more about that too. Charlene said, please recommend some of those resources. Yeah, we're definitely going to look at some resources in a moment, Charlene. And she also said this is new knowledge and skill. So that's what I mean. You know, we need to be supporting each other. So here's just a small visual where I've actually shown you some of the things I've been holding up, because I've now in Barbados received the packages. So it's great that I've got resources here to hold up for you. So we're going to be talking about some of these things here. You need a clear lesson sequence. And here's the CPD here. I'll show you that again later. It can be in a book, it can be online. Ideally, it's online, because then you can just watch a short video. If you've forgotten what it means to segment, to spell, you can quickly look at a video and remind yourself of that. But a package would include all of these things. Here are the books, here are the teaching cards, here's the teacher's resource. You want some assessment and some games to keep the children engaged, and to keep us engaged, because we need to be excited about what we're teaching too. So a structured program, what do we mean by a structured program? You'll all be familiar, I'm sure, with structured programs of different kinds that you've used, but I don't know how much you're using structured reading programs. So I've used Snappy Sounds, which is the Macmillan program here, as an example, but there are lots now available in the market. So you can see that we have 8 levels in Snappy Sounds, and you can see for level 1, I've put the books across the top. So for each level, you can see there are a number of books, and the last book is always one that puts all the sounds you've taught together. So it's almost like a little assessment book, which I really like the idea of. So you look for a program that provides a clear structure for delivery over a relatively short time. Remember this kind of 4 to 6, 5 to 7 kind of frame. It should specify a clear sequence for introducing the letters. And again, if I show you in this teacher's book here, I hope, going the wrong way, sorry. I hope you can see that for each level, it's very explicit about the letters that it introduces at each level. That's really important. And plenty of opportunities for consolidation. So here are some of those resources. I held up one of the cards here. I was holding up ch for chin, and on the reverse you can see there's a really nice fixed lesson plan, so it's really easy. You can be showing the children the card and reading your support on the back. So that's a really nice accessibility there. These items at the bottom, I don't have those to hold up, but these are really nice. These are placemats, so children can have them on their tables, and that encourages them to become independent. So instead of asking you all the time, you can say, look at your mat, remind yourself, talk to your friend sitting next to you about what it says on the mat. So independence is key in systematic synthetic phonics. The other thing, I've kept talking about the importance to be speedy, but obviously not at the expense of leaving children behind. And the other feature in this program, Snappy, which is from Macmillan, Maria's asking, where can I get those resources? They're from Macmillan, and I'm sure they can help you with some details afterwards. Notice on the teacher's notes, it actually gives you a guide for how long you might consider spending on different parts of the lesson. And in my experience internationally, that's been hugely popular. Teachers, if you've got to tell the children what the lesson goal is, which we love to do now to make sure that they understand what the lesson is about, then it's useful for me to know that actually it's really quick. I'm just going to tell them, okay, today we're learning about the letter G, which makes the sound, the phoneme G. And then I'm done and I'm moving on. And then in part 2, you can see I can take 3 minutes to practice saying the sound. So I really like that as well. So that's something that's I don't think so many resources offer that, but I think it's really important. Look for something here that's giving you a discrete, structured daily lesson. Ideally, the lessons are daily, but I know that that's not always possible. You know, we're at different situations around the world, different requirements make that quite tricky. But that's the ideal, that it's short and sharp, but daily. So little and often is better than 3 hours, 3 hours a week, as it were. And again, notice this sequence. Once you know that sequence, that makes your job so much easier as a teacher. And actually, it makes the learning easier because the children know where they are in the sequence. And notice also, it's about saying the sound, hearing the sound, writing it and reading it. Remember the 2 sides of that coin, the reading and the writing. So that's a really useful lesson sequence to share. Okay. That previous slide mentioned say the sound. And we've talked about this, the importance of saying the sound. It cropped up in the Barbados materials too, if you remember. So your lips only touch for 4 letters of the alphabet. Which 4 are those? Let's see if you're still there and I've got you with me. Which 4 letters are the labial letters? Does anybody know? Yeah. B. Mm. P. One more. I can't remember which ones I've said now. B. Mm. P. And I don't think anyone said W. 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 Some people put, and actually is perilously close. But if you watch, I'll try to come in closer. Actually, it's my top teeth that go on my bottom lip to say. So my lips don't teach. So this kind of teaching is really important for children. And again, you should try to look for a resource that supports this. And if you're not confident yourself about some of those letter pronunciations, and lots of people around the world aren't because of their own first language, it's actually quite useful to have a resource where it gives you that sound. I want to share this with you. This is a video, and it's just going to start now. Just have a listen to how this boy struggles, and I'll tell you about him in a moment.
This. Okay, Steve, show Josh, please. This. Josh, you need to be looking at Steve. This. Oh. This. You mean this? I need to say this. Look at my tongue. This. This. Come on. One more time.
Just look. This. You see here your tongue. You put it to the teeth here.
Okay.
And the S one.
Okay, so
this.
This. That's it. One more time.
This.
You've done it. Good. Nazli, you. Hang on, let me get back to my seat. Okay.
Okay, so just while we're going back to the presentation, that was a long time ago now, and that was I think, yes, here we go. That was a boy in a secondary school in London, actually, and he hadn't had any phonics training, and this is a very common mispronunciation, and he was struggling to understand that he had to physically put that tongue between his teeth to make that sound. It's a really awkward thing to have to do, but the other really nice thing about this video is it was actually not the teacher that got him to do it. It was actually a peer, a friend, who was coaching him. And actually, it's cut off a bit on this video, but if you could see the whole thing, Steve, the friend, is actually really coaching this lad to make the sound, and he gets there. He does manage to do it. But some children do find it difficult to manipulate the teeth, the mouth, it's really quite challenging. So that's an important part of systematic synthetic phonics. So this was a slide from a course that I developed for Spanish speakers, actually. And we specifically picked out sounds that we knew Spanish speakers would find quite difficult. And that was really well received, because it showed that we were taking into account the first language. And I think as teachers, if we can't find a course that does that for us, that takes into account our mother tongue, then actually that's something we as teachers bring to the children, because we know, because we speak that language too, which sounds they're going to find a little bit more difficult to say. But the pure sounds, so not s, but s, not f, but p, soft, p, qua. That's an interesting one. 2 letters, 2 sounds. Qua, not la, b, k, k. That's 2 letters, but 1 sound. And I, just to give you a flavour of what I mean by pure sounds. Okay, racing on. We've only got 15 minutes left. I've talked too much again. Writing the letters, I've mentioned this before. Finding a program that supports the correct letter formation is really important. We all think we know how to write letters correctly, but trust me, as adults, we make mistakes. Capital letter M is a classic that people sort of start at the bottom and, go up, down, but actually it should be top to bottom and then left to right. It should be down, pen lift, down, up, down. So, there are lots of examples like that where we need to be consistent. That's the most important thing, to be consistent. Thank you, Charlene. Charlene's enjoying the presentation. That's great to hear. Thank you. There are videos, Marissa. Yeah, there are videos that teach pronunciation of letters. There are lots online, but also there are in the Snappy Sounds program. I'll show you in a moment. There are, in fact, I can show you now, but I'm worried I'm going to run out of time. There are some very nice photographic resources which are useful too if you're not sure about how to put the mouth together to make the sounds. So quickly, what do we mean by blending? I just want to double check. We blend phonemes all through a word to decode for reading. So by that, we do not mean that we're blending the letters at the beginning of word. We're not saying k, at. We're not lumping at together. We must say each sound for each letter. So k, at, k, at, k, at, k, at. Cat. I can read the word cat. Okay, so that's a really important principle in synthetic phonics. In analytic phonics, remember I mentioned that a while ago, analytic phonics is about finding those patterns, the at, or looking at words that begin with bl or st. This isn't that. This is about knowing each letter has a sound. And similarly, okay, so what does that mean in practice for materials? Well, it means you need lots of decodable texts for children to practice. And I already mentioned that these books are highly controlled language. They're not the best stories because you've got so few words and letters that you can play with. So they're not Shakespeare, but they can be engaging and they can have beautiful illustrations and they do give children confidence. So, something like here, this one I keep holding up, but I've got lots more here. The snail trail. It's a charming story, and it's at the beginning of the book. Sorry, I keep going the wrong way. It gives you some guidance here as a teacher, and then it also gives you the phonics page at the beginning, so you know exactly what the children are practicing in this book. Before they start, you can check, and then they've got beautiful illustrations. This one's about Craig and a funny little snail that keeps going in different places, and it just practices lots and lots of words with the A sound. So really important to have high quality decodable text. Here's some more examples. And Jen and Zach's Gran is not well. Jen has a plan. I miss Gran's grin. Gran is sad. So you can get the feeling that this text is easily decodable. And actually it's about adjacent consonants, because you can see we've got Gran. So we're not saying gr-an, we're saying g-r-a-n, gran, p-l-a-n. Sorry, I'll start that again. P-l-a-n, plan. That's what we want the children to do. At the bottom here, you can see it doesn't have to be actual reading books. I mean, it's fantastic if it can be because they're so engaging for the children, but it can be here, this piece of paper here. This is from a lady called Debbie Hepplewhite, who's got a phonic program, and this is her reading material. She does it like a worksheet, and it involves reading and writing, but it isn't actually a book, but it's still really important practice. And here at the bottom, you can see there are some non-fiction books. So that's the other important message. We definitely want the children to be reading fiction and non-fiction. And here's all the decodable readers from Snappy Sounds. So, you know, you can get some beautiful non-fiction books that still are taking into account the phonics at the beginning. So having a program that provides you with practice for the children at the right level is critical. They are beautiful books. Omeldita, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Yeah, they're really nice, and I'm really excited that they've come. Lots to see at the pond, loads of things, such a fright. You know, they're very engaging. Sorry, we must rush on because we've got 10 minutes. So that's what you need for blending, for reading. But remember, I keep saying, but it's about writing too. It's about knowing those letter formations, but it's also about spelling. So if I want to write the word cat as a child, I think I probably see the picture of a cat and I'm thinking the word cat, I want to write it. So what does it begin with? Cat. Oh, okay, I know how to write k. I might make the wrong choice. I might put a K, but at least it shows that I know that both a C and a K actually represent the sound k. What's next? Cat. K. Oh, I know how to write an A, so I can write the letter A. Cat, cat, cat. Oh, it ends in the T sound. So now I need to write the letter T. I know how to write T. I write it. I read my writing. Cat, cat. I've written the word cat. I'm so clever. Yes, Herbatia says, how about the C and the K sound? Yeah, that's okay. If children wrote the word cat with a K, you can talk to them and say, oh, well done. That's fantastic. Which other letter? You know another letter that makes the K sound that we need for cat. That's the kind of teaching where we have to just intervene. That's part of understanding the alphabetic code. At the bottom there, I put words night and blend. You can see this is just to reinforce that we really need to be teaching the spelling sounds. So night, a word like night, we say n, I, t. It's got 3 sounds. How do I write those 3 sounds? Even though I is represented by 3 letters. And a word like blend, b, l, e, n, d. Oh gosh, I've got to write 5 letters for that. Okay, that's really important in systematic synthetic phonics. Really simple examples, but hopefully to get the point across. When we've done that teaching of a letter and its sound and how we write it and how we blend it in words, we need so much practice. You know, children need so much practice, and that can be activity worksheets. So, you know, in this program, you get a whole series of worksheets. It can be workbooks. It can be online activities. It can be multisensory things or things that can be taken home. Parents are crucial in this process of any teaching and learning. And generally, they find phonics quite fun, because they perhaps haven't come across it before. So again, lots and lots of practice. And I wanted to share with you some examples of where practice has become multisensory, and to raise with you, do you think it's really important that children are engaged in active learning. Because what happens typically in the UK, I might say, is that sometimes the activities become so fancy that we lose sight of what it is we're doing them for. So I'm really happy with active learning. Children need to be active. Children enjoy that. But let's have a look now at what these children are doing in their learning of phonics. Okay, I think we're going to go straight on to the next one, and then we can, because I've got a couple of videos that I wanted to share with you that we can then talk about. I hope you can see them. Okay, remember that one. And I think there's one more. Is there? Can't remember now. So I'll talk while I can't remember if I had another one as well, but you can see in those examples, oh yeah, that's all, sorry, we'll go back to the presentation. Those examples, so one, we have the children singing a song. Now in something like Letterland or Jolly Phonics, which are established programs, learning a little ditty, a little song is really helpful for children. It's a mnemonic, it helps them remember. Those children, they were in Uruguay actually, they were Spanish speaking children, and they'd learnt this song, yellow jelly, mix it up. And it was just fun, and that gave them pronunciation practice too. And that particular sound is difficult for them to distinguish in Spain, so it was really important. And I think it's great. I mean, I think children need to have those kind of hooks to hang on to, and it makes learning fun. And learning always has to be fun to be engaging. That second example, that was, I think that might also have been in Uruguay. The teacher was teaching capital letters and their sounds. And the children had to stand by their letter sound, and she would say a sound, and she said, S. And of course, the child who was standing by A jumped over, and all the other children were like, no, it's wrong. And then she said it again, and the child who was standing by the letter S jumped over the letter. So that's just some ideas of how you can make learning fun and engaging. Here are some more, but always with this idea, this caveat, are we losing sight of the lesson objective? Can we keep it really focused, because we don't want to waste time? So here we've got pictures of, here's a child going up to the interactive whiteboard to be engaged in the learning. These children are playing a sort of running game where instead of jumping over the letter, you say the letter and they have to go and stand on the letter. And then here you can see there's like a treasure hunt of, I think it's high frequency words. So, you know, you can bury them in the sand, and then children have to dig them out. And if they find one, then they have to read it, that kind of thing. You can have here, bottom left, you can chalk the words on the playground, and then you can say a word and the children have to run to that word. That's quite fun to do. And it looks like this bottom right one is another one where they're outside. You know, if we can take learning outside, then it's better for children, particularly in the current situation. We want them to be engaged and active and running around in the fresh air. So lots of fun ideas. If you get the children to make something, make sure they can use it, not just, you know, don't just make a mobile and hang it up because you can't do anything with it. But if you make a spinning top, you can play games with it. You can spin it, and then when it lands on one of these pictures, you can say, what is it? Oh, it's a key, or it's a kite. You know, it's good for vocabulary. So really make sure that the activities are useful and have longevity. Literally 5 minutes now, so I'm going to race this last little bit. Look for a program that definitely covers irregular or tricky words. We commented on this earlier, and in Snappy Sounds you can see there are different levels. At different levels, different tricky or high frequency words, sometimes called common exception words, are introduced. Always try and use phonics first, because a word is only tricky if you don't know the rule, how to decode it. So a word like is only difficult if you don't know that s sometimes says z. If you know that, then it's not hard to read. So assessment, I mentioned at the beginning, and I fear I'm not going to have time to say very much, but assessment is critical. If you're going to buy a program, then you definitely need to look for something that includes assessment. So in these times of COVID, you definitely want a program that supports you with online teaching, that supports you to support parents. You need the help of parents while children are learning at home. And also never forget our bottom 20%. You always need a program that helps you to differentiate, to support those lowest attaining children. Here's the CPD I mentioned, the short videos that you can look at in Snappy Sounds. Here are e-learning books online, so children can actually access those decodable books online. With 3 minutes to go, what did we cover in this session? I'm sorry the last bit was rather rushed. We looked at what do we mean by phonics and what's the evidence for it. And remember, it's not just any phonics, it's systematic synthetic phonics. What part does it play in reading and writing development in our youngest children? And what should we look for if we're looking for a systematic synthetic phonic program? I hope I've given you lots of ideas, and I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I'm so sorry that we've run out of time for questions. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all again some point soon. Thanks very much and goodbye.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gill, as always. I think you can notice from the engagement in the session that everyone found it super useful. And don't worry at all about not having enough time. I think as long as we've got the crux of your session completed and everyone's really happy with that, that's what counts. But there is further information. You can contact us on caribbean@macmillaneducation.com if you do have any questions for Gill or Macmillan. And also in terms of the resources as well, if you'd like to know the availability, please do contact us, follow us on social media, and do check out our website for upcoming webinars. Just to say once again, thank you so much to Gill, as always. It does a fantastic job with our webinars. It's always great. And if you notice in the background, she's got some lovely plants that I think we should really focus on. They are from the region. She's currently in Barbados, so I thought we would highlight her lovely plants. So take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you in an upcoming session soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.